Hey guys, in light of us not being in the classroom, I wanted to go through this annotation with you to help you since we're also going to be writing an analysis of this article. So I'm going to read this with you and kind of point out what I want you to be looking for. If you look off to the side in our notes section, I have in blue, there are questions I want you to answer instead of taking, if you want to add your own notes, that's fine. But if you can answer the questions that are in blue, you should be good to go. In red, I have things that I want you to define. So before I start reading, if you will go through here and define so that you're ready with the words that I'm going to be reading out to you, that would be helpful. Go ahead and leave those blue ones blank and we can talk a little bit about those. I've also made notes of where I want you to look specifically for logos and pathos. If you don't remember those definitions, if you go ahead and click on the next assignment, which is a planning doc, I have a link to some definitions of both logos and pathos that you can remind yourself what those are. You're going to need those for that planning doc, so you can go ahead and put those there if you want. If you have your note cards at home, you can look those up again because you will need to know what those are in order to do this. So let's go ahead and start reading. And this is an article that was written, it's an op-ed piece that was written talking about fairness in America. And please excuse any noise or little people you see in the background because we've got school going on here too. So here we go. Monkeys were taught in an experiment to hand over pebbles in exchange for cucumber slices. They were happy with this deal. Then the researcher randomly offered one monkey, inside of a second, an even better deal, a grape for a pebble. Monkeys love grapes, so this fellow was thrilled. The researcher then returned to the second monkey, but presented just a cucumber for the pebble. Now, this offer was insulting. In some cases, the monkey would throw the cucumber back at the primatologist in disgust. So, In other words, the monkeys cared deeply about fairness. What mattered to them was not just what they received, but also what others got. So up here in this blue question, what happened in this experiment? So just give me a little summary of what you learned here. Think about, I like this point that they made at the end, that fairness doesn't mean, because obviously that monkey was okay with getting a cucumber at first. What changed to make him not happy about the cucumber? Think about that, okay? So you can pause this if you need to go back and answer that question. I'm going to keep going. Monkeys aren't the only primates offended by inequality. For example, two scholars examined data from millions of flights to identify what factors resulted in air rage incidents. One huge factor, a first-class cabin. So now, if you aren't somebody that's been on an airplane too often and haven't seen too many movies with it, sometimes they're on a plane, there's two parts of the plane. The first part is the first class cabin where there will be lots of room. Sometimes you can lay back your seat. You get really great food. It's awesome. And then in the back is where most people sit. And that is, your seats are a little bit more squinched. So this is what they're saying can sometimes cause people to feel unfairly treated when they're on an airplane. So an incident in the coach section was 4 times as likely if the plane also had a first-class cabin. A first-class section increased the risk of a disturbance as much as a 9-hour delay did. So think about that. If you compare, let's say you're supposed to take a flight at noon, and they tell you, oh no, you're here at the airport, but you're going to have to wait until 9 p.m. People get pretty mad about that. They're saying that if you have a first-class cabin at all, that you are as likely to have a disturbance with the passengers as if you had that 9-hour delay. Pretty significant. When there is a first-class section, it is at the front of the plane, and economy passengers typically walk through to reach their seats. But in some flights, the boarding is in the middle of the plane. So in that case, the people going to coach wouldn't see those people in first class before they got onto the plane. They would know they were there, but they wouldn't see all of the great things they were getting. The researchers found that an air rage incident in coach was 3 times as likely when economy passengers had to walk through first class compared to when they bypassed it. So again, when they see it, they're more likely to be upset than when they don't. So now we are going to answer this question. What did the scholars learn about how people respond to being on planes with first class cabin? And here we're going to be specifically looking for logos. So remember, I asked you to go back and look up that definition if you didn't have your tool card with you. And if you didn't do that beforehand, I would suggest you go do that now and see if you can find that logos. And then you're going to be highlighting that, let's see, in purple in here. Okay, so let's go on to the next section. Again, pause that to answer those questions and we'll go on. All right, so the dysfunction affects not only those at the bottom, but also the lucky ones at the top. Consider baseball. Some teams pay players more disparately than others do. And one might think that pay inequality creates incentives for better performance and more wins, right? You would think that if you're going to pay me more, that I might do better than somebody who's not paid as much as I do. But actually it says, in fact, economists have crunched the data and found the opposite is true. Teams with greater equality did much better, perhaps because they were more cohesive. So when the teams are paid more similarly, you don't have any superstars in there that are paid 2 and 3 and 10 times as much as the regular players. They actually do better together. What's more, it turned out that even the stars did better when they were on teams with flatter pay. So not only did the whole team play better, the stars played better. Giving them more money didn't help them to do better at their job. It says higher inequality seemed to undercut the superstar players it was meant to incentivize, which is what you'd expect if you believed that the chief effect of pay inequality was to reduce cooperation and team cohesion, Payne notes. Something similar emerges in national statistics. So we're going to read about that in a second. So let's answer this question up here. It says, what did the economists learn about fairness from studying baseball team salaries? So if you'll answer that, and then come back to me and we'll start on the next section. People seem to understand this truth intuitively, for they want much less inequality than we have. In a study of people in 40 countries, liberals said CEOs should be paid 4 times as much as the average worker, while conservatives said 5 times. So think about that. If I'm a regular worker and I make $10 an hour, we're saying that the CEOs of the company should make $40 an hour to $50 an hour. It makes sense to those people that are making the big decisions. We all understand that they should get paid more. They probably have more education, more experience, and it's more on the line for them. So we understand that they should be getting paid more than the person who is just starting out in their career. But it says, in fact, the average CEO at the largest American public companies earns about 350 times as much as the average worker. So instead of you making $10 an hour and the CEO making $50, they're actually making $3,500 an hour. Pretty significant, right? And that's what the world looks like right now. But we are thinking it should be way less than that if we're just asked. So then, presented with unlabeled pie charts depicting income distributions in 2 countries. So one of them showed that 1 to 350 range, and one showed something more in those range of 1 to 4 to 5 times range. 92% of Americans said they would prefer to live with the modest inequality that exists in Sweden, who would have been more like in that 4 to 5 times range. Republicans and Democrats, rich and poor alike, all chose Sweden by similar margins. So what do we learn about how Americans feel about our wage gaps currently? And again, you're going to be looking for logos in this section. We've got some pretty significant ones here that you can find. All right, so now answer those questions and highlight your logos, and we'll go on to the next section. When the level of inequality becomes too large to ignore, everyone starts acting strange, Payne notes. Inequality affects our actions and our feelings in the same systematic, predictable fashion again and again. It makes us believe weird things, superstitiously clinging to the world as we want it to be rather than as it is, he says. Inequality divides us, cleaving us into camps not only of income, but also of ideology and race, eroding our trust in one another. It generates stress and makes us, and makes us all less healthy and less happy. Think of those words in the context of politics today. Doesn't that diagnosis of stress, division, and unhappiness strike a familiar chord? Let's stop for just a second. So if you think back to our section right here, he's saying that, you know, we're not just taking us and putting us in little compartments based upon of our income, but also of what we believe, what we look like. And when that happens, you start to have this us against them mentality, which makes us less healthy and less happy. And you know what? Speaking of, and this will be a little bit of a clue for you, you are in this section, you're going to be looking for pathos. Sorry about that. So there in this section, you're going to look for some pathos and highlight that for me. So now we're thinking about what politics looks like today. So it says, so much of the national conversation now is focused on President Trump for understandable reasons. But I suspect that he's a symptom as well as a cause. So a lot of people say that he is causing our country to be divided. But this article is proposing that perhaps he is. They're telling us that they believe that as well. But they're also saying that probably where he comes from, the fact that he has a lot of money, is also a symptom of the fact that we have that inequality in our country. And then he's continuing to maybe be a cause of it as well. Again, that's his opinion through this article. And so it says, that to uncover the root of our national dysfunctions, we must go deeper than politics, deeper than poverty, deeper than demagoguery, and confront the inequality that is America today. Okay, so in this question, I want you to answer, what does the author say are the effects of inequality on our society? So go ahead and answer all these blue questions, do the highlights. You should be able to find several instances of logos. There's a couple instances of pathos for sure. Look for a metaphor. If you don't remember what a metaphor is, just as a quick reminder, a metaphor is comparing two unlike things without like or as. So that's saying one thing is another thing. So look for that and highlight that. Also look for some tone words and highlight those. After you've completed this, there's a quiz, and then there's going to be a planning document that we will go over as well. So take that quiz, and then let's look at that planning document together. So come back, and we will talk about that together in another video. Thanks, guys.